This is the Tame Aperture podcast.
Open the pod bay doors, Cal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Welcome to the Tame Aperture podcast, where we talk all things movies from first-time directors, indie, art house, and much, much more. Today on the podcast, we talk the 2009 Greek drama film by Yorgos Lanthimos titled Dogtooth, about a husband and wife who keep their children ignorant of the world outside their own property and well into adulthood. The film is Lanthimos' second feature film and was nominated for the Best Foreign Language Film at the 83rd Academy Awards. I'm Gabe Bienendahl, filmmaker, film instructor, and movie enthusiast, and I'm joined, as always, by veteran podcaster and editor, Mr. Alan Martindale. Alan, how the hell are you?
I'm speechless. That doesn't happen to me very often. I'm usually very long-winded, but after this one, man, those credits started rolling. And I stood there staring at the screen, expecting some revelation to hit me like a ton of bricks, and it never came. I don't know what I just watched.
I still don't entirely know that I don't think I can walk through it. I'm having a hard time compartmentalizing what it is I saw.
Yeah.
So it's, I think we'll be able to break it down.
For sure.
At least to a degree. But it's going to be a little more of the untraditional, where we're kind of jumping around back and forth. We're not going to be able to walk through a linear storyline ultimately. I feel like it's a little harder to do that with this particular film. Let me tell you why I chose this one first. We've kind of been going back and forth on our choosing. You'll choose one, I'll choose one, you'll choose one. This is kind of the system that we've established. So a few episodes back, we watched The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
Yeah.
Starring Colin Farrell. And we both came into that podcast, had not seen that film, and we walked away. Even going into it, we both loved it.
Right.
We hadn't discussed it, but we both enjoyed the film quite immensely. We both thought it was a really well put together movie. So I thought, well, hell, this Yorgos Lanthimos, this Greek filmmaker, he's got it together. He's doing some exciting and surreal things.
Because The Lobster was great too.
The Lobster was great, absolutely. And I'm actually excited for his upcoming film. And the name skips me at the moment, but we'll get to that. And I watched the trailer for it, and it looks really good. So I thought, well, let's. And so here's how I was talking to my older sister, avid listener of our podcast. Thanks, Ashley. Shout out.
Thanks for listening.
We got 12 subscribers now. And she goes, yeah, she's like, I wanted to watch that Killing of a Sacred Deer. Should I watch the film first, or should I listen to your guys' episode first? And I said, well, Alan says it right in the episode. He says, stop listening to us and go watch the film. So I said, watch the film first. She says, yeah, because I'm really interested, because about 10 years ago, I saw one of his films. I know who made The Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's called Dogtooth. And me and my friend, Esther, were both like, we walked out of that going, what's going on? So I said, wait, what was the name of the film? Because I hadn't seen it. And she says, Dogtooth. So I started doing a bit of small research. I started looking at Dogtooth, and I go, wow, this could be something quite interesting. So this was the opening into to picking this particular movie, was because we both loved the film that we saw, two of his films that we've seen. My sister didn't say she loved Dogtooth, but she said, I walked out going, what the fuck?
Which that's exactly what I would expect after watching The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer. I would expect nothing short of walking out saying, what the fuck?
Right.
This is just done in a different way.
Intriguing, right? Because then you're the curiosity, and we said this in the podcast with Killing of a Sacred Deer, which was like, I'm just constantly curious. I'm constantly like, what's next?
Right.
And so with this one, I thought, let's do it. So that's why I chose this particular one. I am a fan of him as a filmmaker, and my sister kind of alluded to it as well. So here we have Dogtooth. So that's the introduction to it, and let the confusion of the breakdown begin.
So I'm going to make a prediction. I'm predicting that both of us will come out of this podcast liking the movie more than maybe we did going into it, because that tends to happen on this show. Like we'll talk through things and end up enjoying it more. The discussion makes us enjoy it more. That's my prediction, and I'm hoping, because I don't dislike it. I think it's very well made. I think he hits all the right beats. It's just the subject matter is just so out there, and I don't quite understand. So basically the premise is these two parents this mom and this dad are keeping their children sheltered from the world in an extreme way. They're not only keeping them away from other people and away from the outside of the world, they're keeping them in the house, but they're also teaching them things that are wrong. Like they're teaching them that the wrong meanings of words, and they're teaching them that cats are killer animals who will kill you and rip your flesh apart. And the thing that really is kind of made me disconnect from the movie a little bit was that I don't understand what the motivation was. I don't get it, because the precise care that they took to fool their children, it almost felt like they were conducting an experiment of sorts. But I don't get the sense that that's what they were doing. So I'm not quite sure what the point of it all is.
Yeah, I think and great introduction into this, because basically you have these, and these are adult children too.
Right.
So this isn't as though it's a 10-year-old kid being told about how a cat is a killer animal these are 20 plus year old kids or adults. And I agree with you. I don't know that it's ever really established in terms of what the motivation is. I think if, at least initially, we look at it and say, hey, you look at all Yorgos' films, there's always allegories.
Right. True.
So once again, we can fall back into this idea that maybe there's an allegorical tie-in to something. What, I'm not 100% sure. I have some ideas and we'll get into those, but maybe there's something there and it's just that. But I think the motivation from the parents is some kind of, it almost feels not fascist, but it feels like overpower. It's a power play.
Yes.
And I don't know how else to, the reason I'm not sure quite yet, but there's something to do there with power.
I think you're absolutely right. Obviously the father is like the dictator of sorts. Like he's the guy in charge. And a good example of this power is that they've told the children that when airplanes fly across the sky, they can sometimes fall to the ground, but when they get to the ground, they're just model airplanes. So they don't understand the idea of perspective. Like I'm further away from something, so something smaller. They just see an airplane flying on the ground and they say, I hope it hits the ground. I hope it falls. So that way I can go get it. And they have like a collection of these little model airplanes. And what happens is the parents hear an airplane and one of them will run and grab a model plane and throw it somewhere in the yard, and then they have to go find it. And it's just bizarre. And then the idea of blindfolding them and having them find their way from different parts of the house out to the yard. Like, I just don't understand, why are you doing this? Like, I think you're right. There's got to be some sort of metaphor or allegory going on. And I don't know if I just don't know what it is. It doesn't make any sense. I was intrigued the whole time, but I just didn't get it.
Yeah, I think if I was to guess, and like I say, we say this all the time, which is I'm not one to pretend like I know exactly what every filmmaker's doing. That's the beauty of movies, though, right? Is we get to look at them from our lens, and then we get to decide what they mean to us. I think that's the beauty of film. So if I was going to take a stab at some kind of allegorical comparison to something, it has to do with power, like we mentioned, but also has to do with some kind of control. So it regarding potentially political or governmental control. and dictatorial leadership, right? And so maybe there's something there that we could explore a little deeper. But yeah, I mean, the example that you shared with the plane is really the most, it's the least of all the craziness that's going on. Like, you know, a plane and not understanding perspective, or seeing a plane up in the sky and then it's hoping it falls as if it's some kind of toy, and then the parents playing into it as getting model airplanes, etc. That's like the least of the craziness.
It really is.
Because even in the opening 20 minutes, and I don't know if this is good or bad, so I'm gonna throw this up in the air and see where it lands. Which is,
I know where you're going.
It's the father brings home. She's not a prostitute, but he basically picks up the security guard, a female security guard, at his work. He blindfolds her to drive her to his compound, his house. I call it a compound because it almost feels like that's what it is. Mm-hmm. It's gated off. You're not really allowed out. It'd be hard to get out, etc. And he drives this female security guard back to the house. And the next thing you know is the female security guard and his son, his adult son. I say son, and I want to clarify that he's an adult.
They act like they're like teenagers.
But they act childish.
Yeah, they act like they're child.
You're absolutely
children.
Right. This is another common theme I see in his films, by the way. There's a lot of childish mannerisms in adult characters.
That's a good point. Very good point.
And but he brings this female security guard home, who we find out he's paid to have sex with his son.
Yes.
And I just don't get it. I mean, and I bring it up because we're talking about model airplanes, and then the next thing you know, he's keeping his son at the house, prohibited from the world, but yet still, at least, I guess, accommodating certain primal, you know?
It's strange because obviously they know that the son is at an age where he has needs. And so they go out and they find a woman. And I mean, she, for all intents and purposes, she is a prostitute. Like, they're straight up paying her to have sex with him. Only it feels more than that. Like, it feels more like, yeah, she's there for him to be able to have sex with, but she's also kind of a companion for the other girls. And it's a weird, they have more reverence for her. And they almost treat her almost as if she's not, I don't want to say part of the family, but as if she's, you know, a distant relative or something. Like, they give her gifts in appreciation for, you know, what she does for them. And it's just a weird thing. And I don't quite understand. I think he told the story very well. And I do want to say that. Like, I think the way he presented this world and the way he kind of unveiled certain aspects of the family, I think it was done very, very well. It's just so bizarre and out there that I almost feel like I need to watch it again to have a better grasp on it. But honestly, this movie kind of made me uncomfortable, and not just in some of the violent parts, and not just on some of the, you know, the risque, very taboo parts, but just overall, it just made me feel, I don't know.
You weren't okay with the security guard not getting oral sex from the son, so then going to the daughter and asking for oral sex from the daughter in exchange for her headband, or for a headband?
No, I wasn't okay with that. I was not super comfortable with that. But it is interesting because even that kind of serviced the story, because then you realize that they don't understand the idea of giving a gift and giving, you know, goods or services in return for a gift. So, you know, when she says, "I'll give you this headband if you lick me," from the rest of the movie, the daughters
think... That's a hot take right there.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, that's exactly what she said pretty much.
I'm going to put that on our website with just your audio.
Just make sure to clip down that audio and ruin any potential for a job I will ever have in my life. But from then on, the daughters, they think that's how you obtain objects, and they don't even view it as a sexual act. They just think like, I'll lick your shoulder, I'll lick your ear, I'll lick your cheek. Like that's how I'm going to get what I want, because they were taught this lesson for the very first time.
Yeah, I mean, there is and they do that throughout. Like there's some kind of, it's almost for lack of a better way to explain it, because they've been secluded from the natural, I'll call it the natural world, for whatever that means. But from the outside world, the licking is a form of affection in a sense.
Right.
Whereas for us, it, of course, is completely absurd because they've never experienced anything else. They don't know how to weigh the difference between what it could mean, or what, in terms of what our culture views it. Yeah. So it's that was strange. And they also don't, I like what you said, because I don't think they don't understand the value of possessions of things, because she does it for a headband.
Right.
So it's like they're like, anybody in their right mind would never do that for a headband.
Exactly.
But because they don't know the value of what it is, and it's different for, I guess it's different. I don't know, maybe it's not, but they don't go into headbands throughout the film, but it's different. So she does it in exchange for a headband. So this is how they're, like you said, the service offer and the exchange for things that seem absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and even the fact that the daughter offers a pencil in exchange. Yeah. You know, she's like, it has an eraser. They're so sheltered. And I think this is the part that made me so uncomfortable, are seeing these people who are grown adults and they don't understand the most basic of things. And it really does make you angry because they were robbed of a life. And that's why I think I was trying to find the meaning behind it and the motivation behind it, because you cannot rob these people of life for no reason. I mean, there's got to be a reason. Like it felt like there had to be an experiment going on or something. And I don't know if you thought this, but remember they were talking about their brother behind the fence. That I took that to mean that they had another child and he escaped or got out or something. Is that
yeah, that's how I interpreted it. I don't know that he was actually real. Was he?
I think he was, because the daughter, when they were having the wake for him, one of the daughters says, you know, I gave you some items to take with you and I'm sorry they couldn't protect you, or something along those lines. So I am under the impression that he bailed, like he somehow got out.
That was a part of confusion for me. I wasn't sure if he was actually a real actual brother or some kind of figment of their imagination.
Which is a good point, because these parents will make up anything. They lie about the meanings of words for absolutely no reason.
The funniest one to me that stood out when it comes in regards to that was when they start playing Fly Me. The dad puts the record on, the vinyl, and it's Fly Me to the Moon. I think that's Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And starts playing Frank Sinatra, which of course is in English. We should probably identify to those listening that this, of course, it's an international film, a foreign film. So it's not in the English language. It's subtitled. And so when they're playing Fly Me to the Moon by Frank Sinatra, the father is interpreting to his family what Frank Sinatra is saying in the song, but it's not the true interpretation.
Not only that,
it's this interpretation of this fantastical tale about kids that leave their parents die and all these kind of crazy things.
Not only that, for some reason they lied to the kids and told them that the person singing was their grandfather.
Oh yeah.
There's just so many weird random things. Like, you know, when the daughter says, "Can you pass me the telephone?" And really, she wants the salt shaker, you know, but they've told her that's a telephone. I mean, this is like some 1984 shit here, you know, where they're changing the meanings of words.
But I think you're right. And this is what makes it feel experimental. And it does actually spawn some curious thoughts. where to me, that's what I kept kind of falling back to. Like, what happens to a human being who, that is an interesting thought, right? Which is like, if you grew up in this, everything that we identify that has meaning, if you're growing up in a different quote unquote context, right? Like in a different, everything's completely twisted and different. That's intriguing. Like it's and also terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it would be fun to see, you know, the results of this sort of experiment if it weren't so cruel. And the whole thing, that just locking them up, and it's just so sad. The whole thing is so sad. And even the way the siblings have conflicts with each other, man, it goes violent fast. Like it is like immediately one sister is slicing up the arm of the brother with a knife, and it's so bizarre and it's so over the top. And I get why, because that's what they've been taught, because their punishments are always violent. They're always getting, you know, hit or smacked or whatever. But man, that just like, it goes from 0 to 60 super fast with the violence.
Absolutely. The violence turns extreme quick.
Yeah.
And going to this idea of this system that the mother and father have created is a system of punishment reward. The punishment, like you said, is extreme violence. They're basically just beating the shit out of their children.
Right.
If they've done something wrong. So the sister cuts the brother's arm, and then next thing you know, the mom's just beating the shit out of her in her bedroom.
It's just horrific.
And then the opposite of that is these rewards that they get. Like they're in the swimming pool and they're doing these kind of test trial games. And when they do good, I can't remember if they're not holding their breath. I forget. Were they holding their breath? There's a game they're doing in the pool. And when they perform well, they get stickers.
And they count up who has the most stickers, and that person gets to choose the reward or the entertainment for one night of the week or something at dinner. I don't know. Like it's the whole thing just reeks of like a science experiment. But these parents are, I mean, it's not.
Well, and then the entertainment's weird, because the entertainment's basically previously recorded material of the family.
When they're watching that video, I mean, that's their movie right there. That's their entertainment is, you know, we watch Killing of a Sacred Deer, or we talked about So I Married an Axe Murderer. Like, we watch these fun movies to entertain us. These guys their form of entertainment is watching their past memories. I mean, they have them all memorized. Like they're lip syncing along with the video. And I know it's not some experiment, because they're keeping this thing very, very secret. Like they are locked away, very far away. I don't know what the dad does to afford this huge estate. He works in some factory.
I don't know. He leaves every morning and goes to work. He's the only one that gets to leave the gates of the compound, and he goes to some factory.
Right.
And it doesn't really go beyond that, right? So you don't really know what he's doing, but apparently he must be doing decent, because he's living on some nice estate.
Yeah. I mean, it's a straight up villa, and even the wife isn't allowed to leave, which is the weird part, because she's in on all this thing, but she's just as subjugated to him as the rest of the kids. Because he straight up makes up a lie to his coworker of why the wife's never around. Like, he says she's in a wheelchair or something, or tragic accident, so that way she doesn't ever have to show up. Like it feels like Pol Pot or like Kim Jong-un or something, you know, like just totally these elaborate lies to keep people subjugated.
And I wonder, and that goes back to what we were talking about, and that we'll get into that now, because it's like, man, that's probably, I think, some of that allegory or some of that observation, which is you have cultural and political, countries and regimes that basically do exactly what the dad's doing to his 3 children.
Right.
And when you start digging into it that deep, you start opening up a huge bed of curiosity. It's like, man, that's deep. And that's, I think, one of the things that I've always that I always kind of like about what he's done and like in his films, you know, like I don't think for me this film is like the greatest film of all time,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something that makes it difficult to take your eyes off of it.
Yeah. And I think that that comes down to how he tells the story.
I think it has to do with the bizarre.
Yeah.
Like everything, because what's the next bizarre thing that's going to happen? There's a scene in there where the son, and it's done in this dark humor because the son is now hunting a feral cat that's out in the backyard with big old garden scissors.
Oh my God.
And the next thing you know, he's basically he's tearing its head off. I mean, you don't see it because the other thing is with the way Yorgos films, I've noticed this too, like another little trademark is that he cuts a lot of frame. So like whether it's the heads are cut off or it's just bodies or you don't see the entirety of the human or the subject in front of the camera. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Frames are cut off. So you don't see him actually tearing the cat apart, but it's all basically insinuated. But that's so strange. And the two sisters see it as some huge ordeal.
It's a monster. You know, they've never seen a cat before. It's a monster.
Exactly. It's like if you ran across a bear in the frickin' woods.
Exactly.
And like, that's how they're treating it.
And so, they also, I mean, they bought that dog and then they sent, the dad sent it away to be trained, to be a guard dog or whatever. But yet they tell, the parents come up with an idea that they're going to be pregnant again. Like they're going to tell the kids that they're pregnant. And this is a way to keep them subjugated. If they're good, she won't give birth. That's what they tell them.
Yeah.
But if not, she's going to give birth to twins and a dog. So that's how they're going to introduce the dog to the family.
And the fact that the two girls are so adamant about not wanting to share their bedrooms.
Yeah.
The most 5-year-old answer in the world.
Right. I just don't. I keep thinking about, because I didn't think about the whole, maybe the allegory and the metaphor of governmental oppression until you had mentioned that, because it does make sense. Because you think about it, the dad, they're controlling the information, they're controlling the language, they're controlling the media, what comes in and out, and the only threat to the family is really this outside person coming in.
Yeah,
and
the single source. Right,
exactly. So that's pretty much how these oppressive governments work. Is you control the narrative, you control the media, you tell people what to think and how to speak and the meaning of things, and you eliminate any outside influence. Right. And if there is any outside influence, you make them an enemy immediately. So that's an interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Now it's starting to make a little bit more sense to me. I'd still like to. Go ahead.
Because there is that, I was just going to say to what you're saying, because Christina, who's the security guard who they hire to have sex with the son, also goes and starts making relationships with the daughters. But eventually the mother or the father is not pleased with the relationship that Christina's doing. He basically wants to get rid of her and not bring her back ever.
Right.
Because she's infiltrating the information and the system, and she's bringing in new thoughts and ideas that the father doesn't agree with.
She literally brings in movies, like outside media.
Fun, entertaining media, which is completely against his system.
Right. And, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I was just going to say that one scene, it's not funny. I don't want to laugh because it's definitely not funny.
That's a question I have for you before you finish that thought, because isn't it though? That's what it says. I read a lot of these reviews, and some of them are saying black comedy, dark comedy. I
didn't see any humor in it, but the thing, the scene I was going to talk about that I thought was kind of funny, even though it's really messed up, is when after the daughter gets caught with the videotapes, and the father's looking at the tapes, and he says, "Bring me the duct tape." And he's duct taping one of the videotapes to his hand. And you're thinking, what the hell is he doing? And then he just immediately starts beating her over the head with it. I mean, it's not funny, but it's kind of comedic the way he went about it. Like it was an elaborate way to punish her. But that was the only part where I even got a chuckle. Because I read that too. I read, this is a dark comedy. There's some comedic moments. I didn't think there was much funny in here at all.
I wasn't overtly laughing at much of any of the film, but there were things that were strange enough to make me chuckle.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. In that scene in particular, and also let's just say that scene's done. It's done extremely well, and those actors really went for it.
I don't know how they faked a lot of the violence in this. I mean, I keep saying violence.
That's not fake. That scene is legit.
That is 100% legit.
I feel like, and I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it. But watching that, I went, wow, they committed. The two of them got together and committed to do this scene because he's beating the shit out of her. It's real. He's hitting her hard.
And then when he goes to Christina's house to confront her about about bringing the tapes in, and he unplugs the VCR and smacks her over the head with it. That was real too. There is no way. I mean, the way this thing is shot, even the cat, when the son went after the cat, that was in one shot. When he stabbed it, I mean, he kind of got in front of it, but it looked real enough to disturb me a little bit.
The only thing I can say is maybe those garden scissors, those big garden scissors, were a soft prop.
I hope so.
I don't, because he got extremely close to that cat, so man, I don't know.
It was, and then earlier on, you see a guy beating a dog with a stick. Like there's some things that they looked real. They're probably not real, but they looked real enough to be disturbing. And you know me, like I love horror movies, I love the gore, I love all that kind of stuff. But when it's real, it's disturbing. That's when it gets difficult.
It's a different, and once again, you go back to the trademarks of Yorgos, and I feel like those are trademarks that run across the movies that we've talked about up to this point too.
Mm-hmm.
Quick turns to violence. And all the environments are also really bland. They're also like really sterile. They're just like completely, they're dry. Like there's no vibrancy to these atmospheres.
Even in the garden, it's the garden, and it's still just dull, super dull. The pool, super dull. Everything about it. I mean, even the road they live on is just barren and dirt and gross.
Yeah, the color of the film, the way that it's shot, it doesn't mean it's not beautiful in the way that it's executed, or at least done well. But it's very bland, very sterile. But those scenes of violence are props to those actors, because I really think they went for it. I really, really do. I mean, I don't know how else you can film around that, like you mentioned. I
mean, even towards the end, because they tell the children that the only way children can grow up and leave the house is when their dog tooth comes loose, which is talking about their canine teeth, the sharp teeth in your mouth.
Yeah, the vampire teeth.
Vampire teeth, right? And that's that's how you know when a child is ready to leave the house. So obviously that's never going to happen, But when the older daughter is in the bathroom, and you kind of know what she's going to do, like you get the hint because she's got that little weight. She got like a tiny dumbbell weight on the counter. And man, but she just takes that thing and out of nowhere starts smacking her face with it, trying to knock out her dog tooth so she can leave. And even that, I mean, even if that thing's a prop and is like a Nerf weight, that's still got a sting. The force she was hitting it with, it very, very well done. Like again, I can put up with a lot. That was disturbing to me.
Yeah, I mean, and those, I think those little types of scenes are sprinkled throughout. And there's like just disturbing things. I think the actors, the full commitment's there, and it makes for an uncomfortable watch.
Oh yeah. Oh, you could say that again.
I want to talk about this. So we kind of talked about this briefly. But Christina, the security guard, the prostitute security guard, what I do find interesting is that the daughters kind of do start to figure out Christina's kind of feeding or valuing shitty stuff. At first it was a headband, and then it's this, and then eventually she wants the daughter to give her oral sex, but the daughter refuses.
Right.
And she's like, but I want all those tapes in your purse or in your bag. And there are these movies like what was the ones in there?
Rocky and
Rocky, Flashdance,
and Jaws. Jaws was in there too.
Jaws.
Yeah.
And so I loved that part. That part to me was they've only because it's like finally one of the characters that's in this oppressed environment is getting smarter. Like
right.
They're understanding, even in a slight way, right? And I'm not saying that you're smart because you value Jaws, but you should.
Absolutely.
This is a fucking movie podcast.
I'll say it.
And Rocky, Flashdance, we can slide by.
Yeah.
But Rocky and Jaws I can go with. But at least she grows into that. But what I loved is how he incorporated those into the story later, because now she's been watching these movies and she's basically reenacting different scenes in her throughout after she's watched them. She's doing the Rocky scene, and she's
I love that, the dye-colored red water or whatever it is, and doing the slow motion spits. And the hits love
and the
that
punches.
so much.
It was so good. And then she's doing the Jaws scene where she pretends to be Jaws and is basically attacking her brother in the pool.
That may have been my favorite scene in the whole movie.
She goes all in. It's not just like a fun attack. It's not like two kids just playing around. She falls on Jaws.
It feels like watching real life siblings. Because that's the kind of shit that I would do with my brother. Like, you just go over the top when it's your sibling. Like, you go after them.
I feel like you do. Especially when you're young, like you just don't have any kind of control.
Right.
So you just let it go out.
Right.
And even though these are adult people, they are, like we've mentioned, they're childish. So she just goes all out.
Oh yeah.
Basically takes him out like Jaws. And I loved that. And then it kind of leads to one of the last ones where they're doing this party and she starts doing the Flashdance dance.
Oh my God.
Just say it's not quite done as well as the original. Let's just say that.
I just love that that's the parent's form of entertainment, is having their children, one is playing a guitar and the other two are just doing the most bizarre dancing you've ever seen in your life. And the parents could sit there and watch it for hours.
It's bizarre and it's uncomfortable to watch because she can't dance like Jennifer.
Oh,
Beals.
No, definitely not.
So then basically she gets the movie tapes, right? And then, like you mentioned, we talked about this scene earlier, but the dad finds out, and then he reprimands her by beating the shit out of her with the VCR, with the tape. And then this is when they try to extract eventually they try to extract Christina out of the picture, right? Because she's a bad influence on the system. And then the night after the Flashdance scene, or the night of the Flashdance scene, she knocks out one of her dog teeth, right? Like you mentioned, with the dumbbell. And then she hides in the trunk of her father's car.
Before we get there, there's one important scene that is the most uncomfortable scene in the whole movie for me. And I think this was pretty much what ultimately led to her bailing. And that's when Christine is not there anymore. So the father forces the son to choose which of his sisters he would like to have sex with instead of.
I was trying to get over that scene.
I know, but to me,
you're right. You got to bring it up. Keep going.
This is the most uncomfortable scene in the whole movie. It's horrible. It's horrible. But this was another part that I laughed at, and I don't remember which movie this is from. But she's been watching these movies, and so she knows the quotes. And right after she's done, she goes, "Bitch, if you do that to me again, I'm gonna gut you. I swear." And it made me bust up laughing because I thought she was really saying that to him, and then I realized no, it's from a movie.
Yeah, she's reciting one of her movie lines.
Right.
we'll get into it. We got to talk. I mean, we'll go finish the part with the father's.
So anyway,
his test.
His test. So in Jesus.
We gotta bring it up.
We gotta do it.
We can skip past it quickly.
This was one of those almost triple F moments for me, because this was like, fuck, I gotta fast forward because they're just
That's
not.
when you hope you're. So just real quick. We know what the triple F is. It's the fucking fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
When you watch on Amazon Prime, you get a 10-second skip.
Yep.
Now, I think Netflix is also a 10-second skip.
I think so.
If I'm recall. So here's the thing, though, Alan. I watched this movie on Tubi, Tubi. Have you ever heard of this?
I've never heard of it.
It's a free movie platform, right? It's cool because, I mean, for like stuff that you just want to watch for free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So check it out. I happened to run across it, and I saw that this movie was on there when I was ready to watch it. So I started watching. The disadvantage is you get like 1 or 2 30-second commercials.
Oh, okay. Right? Gotcha.
But it was free, so I figured go for it. But here's the advantage. Okay. Tubi has a 30-second fast forward.
Thank God.
So you're getting a 3 for 1 is what my point is.
mercifully giving you a 30-second fast forward.
Why would we want that, Alan?
We would want that because in order to choose which sibling he would like to have sex with, the son is put in a bathtub naked, and his 2 sisters are brought in blindfolded, and the 2 sisters are brought in naked, and he basically just has to feel them up. He's got to feel their breasts, he's got to feel their butts, and find out which one he likes better. And it ends up being the older one. And so that's when I mean, it's incest, straight up incest, brother, sister, and it's so disturbing. And I think this is the thing I didn't quite understand about the son, because when you're at that age, I mean, you're in your 20s or whatever, you definitely have the needs. Like, it's, you definitely are feeling the sexual pull, and you want, you have those needs. But he approached everything very businesslike. Like, it almost didn't even occur to him. And I would imagine that, I don't have a sister, but I would imagine that you're not, even if you're raised in a completely sheltered environment, you're not going to ever be attracted to your sister. Would just be, that's the natural way of things. But he still approached this like a business transaction. And he was just kind of fine with it. And so I don't know, that I guess it kind of goes along with the movie, because there's a lot of things that are just kind of strange, but maybe it's more along the lines, subjugated people. They have to do some things that are pretty horrible because they're forced to.
And I also think that you're right. I think innately there is no attraction to a sibling.
Right.
It's innately not there. And I think you brought something up that was interesting, because throughout the movie, there are various sexual encounters with various people, including the mother and the father. We mentioned some with the brother and Christina, the prostitute security guard, the sisters as well. But you're right. It's interesting because every sexual interaction is a business transaction.
Right. Good point.
There's no emotionality. There's no quote unquote passion. It's just plain and simple. This is what you do, and then it's done.
Right.
And I found you're right. So that was kind of interesting too. And also because he's been subjugated and he's been confined to the space. Maybe that's how he sees it. I don't know. It doesn't excuse it. It's still disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, the older sister, you could tell he was just kind of going along with it. He didn't seem to have an emotion one way or the other. The older sister was not enjoying it. You could tell, like, this was a painful experience for her.
Yes. They had 2 almost kind of different responses to what was happening.
And you know what? God damn it. Yorgos just wanted to linger on that scene for as long as possible. Like, it's like, I already feel super uncomfortable. We don't need to stretch this out any longer, please.
That's once again when you wish you were watching Tubi, because you could get the 30 seconds fucking fast forward.
Seriously. I smell a new sponsor coming.
Yeah, definitely some extremely uncomfortable moments. But then getting to kind of getting past that now, she knocks her Dogtooth out and basically kind of escapes, runs from the compound. And she gets in the back of her father's car in the trunk. And then it just ends at is it at the plant? Does he find the car at the plant that he works at, the factory?
Well,
or
because she's just in the trunk. He runs out of the compound, kind of runs up and down the dirt road looking for her. They don't even think to look in the car. And then I guess
they all go out searching.
Right. Well, the mom and daughter and son are on their hands and knees barking like dogs by the gate.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Because they taught him how to do that.
Because quickly there is a scene where the father teaches them to bark like dogs so that it puts fear in whatever they're trying to scare or something.
Oh my God, this whole thing.
I like how that's our throw-in.
We're
getting closer to the end of kind of summarizing the story, and that's our throw-in scene.
And I'm sure
our throw-in scene is a dad teaching his kids to get on their all fours and bark like a real dog.
And I'm sure there are a lot more too. I mean, this is kind of his MO. He just has weird shit. Like when we talked about Killing of a Sacred Deer, I was telling the story about how I was talking to Jess. And I was trying to explain it to her, and I'm like, there's no way I can explain this movie. And I kind of feel like we're in the same boat here. Like, it just doesn't, we just can't.
You can't get into, you can't get into the layers. I think we did a little better with this one.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to dissect it. We jumped in early with we diagnosed it as a allegory about governmental control.
Yes.
We're sticking with it and we're running with it. We gave some scenes. I think we did a little better so far on this one in terms of the breakdown.
So, but she gets in the car and then I guess the next day the dad drives the car to the factory and she's still in the trunk, I guess. But does she ever get out? Is she die in there? I mean, I don't. How do you end the movie there?
And scene.
I don't.
In movie,
yeah. I don't know how you end the movie there.
That's El Fiend. It's over.
Question mark? Like, like I just don't I get that this movie doesn't need to have like a traditional ending, but that's a straight up cliffhanger right there. Like, is she ever going to get out? Does she die in there? There's got to be some sort of insight into her fate.
Well, let me ask you, what happened to her?
I think she died
get out
in
of
there.
the trunk?
I think she died.
She's just sitting dead in the trunk.
I mean, maybe it's like someone trying to defect from North Korea, like it's maybe you get out, maybe you don't, but it's a very dangerous prospect.
Yeah, you don't know what the outcome's going to be.
Yeah.
You might not make it out alive.
Right.
That's some dark shit.
It's very
Holy cow. When you put it in those terms. Jeez, Alan.
That's an understatement. That is some very dark shit.
Man.
But that's, that's it.
I think these are, he's got those trademarks though.
Yeah.
The childlike stuff, the surrealism. He's got, of course, these ambiguous endings, these endings that don't give any resolution at all. Because even the other, like you look at Killing or the Killing of Sacred Deer or Lost, there's no resolution.
True.
It just ends. And it's open-ended. So that's kind of like you mentioned, that's his MO. That's part of his auteurism. Like as an auteur, he's like, hey, this is what I do. And it seems like he sticks to that pretty strongly.
Right. Yeah. I'm not against that. I like it in some circumstances. This one just left me particularly frustrated though, because throughout the whole movie, I was just so outraged that these kids were put in this situation in the first place, and that there's no real reason behind it other than, I think the dad just, Napoleon complex. That's my theory. He just wants to be a big man for someone. He wants to be in charge of someone. But it looked like he was a boss at the factory. I mean, I don't think he was an underling by any means. I don't know. The whole thing is, the more I try and analyze it, the more I don't understand it.
Yeah, it's not as though he was, and this is not a knock on those running the line or the assembly line, but it looked like he had some kind of higher management. So it feels like he would have had some kind of power elsewhere.
Right.
But for whatever reason, he had to bring that power home. It's controlling. It's manipulative. It's kind of scary.
Very.
Yeah, very scary.
I agree. It's very scary.
What I found interesting about this, and then is this was nominated. So here's this isn't trivia, but this was something that I found interesting about the film, is that essentially the entire country of Greece really got behind this movie.
They love it. People
They
love
love
this
it.
movie.
In so much that kind of that was their submission to the Academy for an international film, for foreign film. And you know what I mean? Like, we're submitting Dogtooth for an Academy Award. And I find, I mean, so I don't know if it's something to, once again, I think that's why I think there's some kind of allegory about government. But they submitted it as a nominee for their nominee for Academy Award, which they loved it. So culturally, the country really got behind it. I don't know that there's a film in that sense that who gets behind films like that in terms of a country.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So
there's definitely, and I don't know enough about Greek history and especially that era of European history. I don't know what was going on that might really resonate with the people there. It feels like I'm probably missing something. It just, because I get the idea, I get the metaphor, I get all that. I'm just not sure the overwhelming love for this movie. I mean, it's not bad by any means, but to me, it's, the ratings that this thing's getting, people love this movie. And
they really do.
I feel like I'm missing something, like a piece of context that would make it connect more.
I mean, look, it won at Cannes Film Festival. It won at Dublin International, so in Ireland. It won. I mean, if I'm going through this list, and there's a handful of them. Stockholm. So, and then of course was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film from the Academy. And the thing that's interesting, he says the film was chosen unanimously by the Greek Film Committee to represent the country at the Oscars.
Wow.
So there was no second option. So.
Yeah. It's good.
Tell me, okay, I have a little piece, some trivia here. I've got some other ratings, a couple pieces of information on the film that I find interesting. Give me a little summary about this watch. You've now seen The Killing of a Sacred Deer. You've seen Lobster. This is the third, unless I'm mistaken, the third Yorgos film that you've seen.
Yep.
Give me a summary of it, and then throw me your rating on this one.
Even when he is doing things that are very difficult, and I think most filmmakers would not have been able to make this as interesting as it was. I think there's a lot in there that he did to make it to keep me going when I otherwise probably would have turned away. Like he's so good at building a world so odd, but so intriguing. Like you want to learn more about it. You don't want to just write it off as some odd, weird, world he's built. You want to learn more about it. So for him, I am still absolutely in love with his craft. I love what he does. This movie's not quite for me. I liked a lot of elements of it, but it's just not. It just, like I said, I was uncomfortable for most of the time. I think that's kind of the point. So I think he was successful in that, but it's not really my thing. Incest and violence towards animals and all that kind of stuff. Not something I'm going to go all in on very often. So that said, I still think he's masterful at what he does. I think he built a really cool mystery, not mystery in the traditional sense, but you just want to know what's going on. You want to know what's happening and what other crazy lies that these parents come up with. So I'm going to go 6.7 videotapes.
Nice. 6.7.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
And if you would have asked me, I think I was right for me. If you would have asked me right after I finished the film, I probably would have gone low 6s.
yeah. And I think your prediction is accurate, which is we always kind of, when you start discussing it and starting to find those little grains of salt and those little things that the little hidden things in there and the meanings and the layering, you always kind of tend to start to increase your score. So
Yes, true. You appreciate it more.
Your prediction was right.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into mine real quick, but I just want to, so we have IMDb. IMDb's got it currently at a 7.3, right? And the Rotten Tomatoes has it, which is exceptionally high. Rotten Tomatoes has it at 93 or 92%. That's the critic score. And then the audience score has it at 76. So still pretty fair.
Yeah.
Right? Like not, it would make sense that the critics would come in at 92. I would have been surprised if those were reversed.
Yeah, I would have been shocked.
But sometimes we'll get those surprises where the critics come in real low and the
Yeah.
audience comes in high on a film like this, which is art house, etc. And that would have been kind of interesting to see, but it's not the case here. The film's 96 minutes long. It's Kino International Film Studios. The film was released in theaters in June of 2010. It's rated R.
That's interesting to me that it was released in 2010 because it looks like it was shot in the 70s.
Yeah. And I think the film which they used to shoot it and kind of his compositions and his framing and the way he puts it together kind of really, I think he was hinting at that. I think the idea was to kind of make it feel older.
Yeah.
I don't know. Once again, it could have to do with trying to match some of the stuff. Maybe it was, something happening in the set. I don't know. I don't want to dig too deep, but yeah, it had that 70s vibe to it. The entire film, here's a couple pieces of trivia though. The entire film was shot on one lens. I find this to be interesting.
Wow.
So the entire film, because that's quite strange, but they shot the whole thing on a 50 millimeter.
Wow.
So that's kind of cool, which is always cool when they just go with one lens through a whole 90-minute picture.
That's very interesting because, I mean, there's a lot of wide shots, a lot of close-ups too. That's very interesting.
He maybe he just didn't know what he was doing and he just chose a 50.
Could be.
I'm just kidding. He definitely knows what he's doing.
He knows what he's doing.
Interesting piece here. The children's names are never given. So you don't ever really you're never able to identify them by their name. The first film from Greece to be officially selected for the Cannes Film Festival in a decade. So that's when it came out. That was the first one in just over a decade. And here is something kind of alluding to what you were saying, which is interesting. It says it's a lot like the 1973 movie El Castillo de la Pureza. I've never seen that film. Director Yorgos Lanthimos has never spoken about the similarities between the two movies, but apparently there's a lot of common themes between that movie and this one. It sounds to me like that's a Spanish film, El Castillo de la Pureza,
Never
from
seen
1973. Maybe he just ripped it off.
Right, it could be. It's worked for Tarantino.
It's worked for a good handful of filmmakers, I think. Interesting thing here. The late actress, Mary Sony, who's the younger daughter. So she must have passed away.
I saw that.
She had a punk band, Alan.
I know. I as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, I got to find out more. Yeah, she died. She wasn't even 30 when she died.
Yeah, that's too bad. But she had a punk band. Interesting. It was Mary and the Boy was the punk band.
Never heard of him, but I'm going to go check him out right now.
That's cool, though. She's a punk rocker. The title comes from one of the lies that the parents tell the children. so that they will only be ready to leave the household when their dog teeth fall out. So that's a pretty simple one. So to kind of surmise it, put it together for me as I kind of break it down, like this is Lanthimos's second feature film. This guy's got a command of the process. Like it, hard to digest some of the stuff and content that's put out there, but this guy he's pretty good at what he does.
Very.
And so there's an appreciation level there for it. It might be that I have to read one top of a review that I found hilarious. Here's the opening line to a review by just a Google review, right? Dogtooth, maybe the most fucked up film ever.
It's in the running.
I have to read some of this. This person's great. Can't say I'm overly familiar with Greek cinema, but this certainly takes the cake as the best and worst Greek film that I've ever seen. That's a pretty good summation.
It is. It hits it perfectly.
The best and the worst Greek film I've ever seen. So that kind of puts it together for me. There's some stuff I agree with there, which is he's doing something right because I'm continually sparked by curiosity. Once again, I used that word a lot when we were doing Killing of a Sacred Deer. Probably people wanted to punch me for saying curiosity all the time. But once again, his bizarre nature and putting things together that just keeps me entranced, for good or bad, for violence, all the different things that he does. None of the stuff which I condone, but stuff that I look at and go, man, I'm continually just intrigued by whatever it is he's doing. It doesn't, for me, rank as one of his best, the ones that we've seen and talked about, at least. It's not up there in terms of surpassing either of The Lobster or The Killing of a Sacred Deer. There's small bits of humor for me. Maybe that's my dark and twisted side. Ultimately, there's some real disturbing stuff too. When I watch the film, it's not one I would watch again. So unless for some reason to do some kind of analysis or essay, which I wouldn't do, but if I was doing that, of course you would watch it again. But other than that, I wouldn't watch the movie again. Whereas with The Killing of a Sacred Deer or The Lobster, I'd watch either of those.
And that's part of your criteria too in grading the movies is how rewatchable they are, right?
For me, it is because I want to be able to see, like, and both of his other ones I would watch again
for sure.
And so this one, not as much, and it may have to do with some of the disturbing nature of it. But I think ultimately, this is a good, well put together film. I think he has a command of the film language, film grammar, impressed with what he does. And so I would say that I would put this, I'm probably pretty close to you. I'm going to say 6.5 airplanes.
Nice. That's a good one.
6.5. I should say 6.5 model airplanes.
Model airplanes. That was my runner-up. I went videotapes, but that was my runner-up.
You had model airplanes as your runner-up?
Yep, I did.
Well, I'm glad I got it then. Look, if you're interested in oral sex, incest, violence, odd behavior, absurdity, surrealism, childlike characters, and sterile and bland environments, Dogtooth is for you.
Yeah, and honestly, it's worth watching if you're interested in Yorgos's filmography. I really think it's worth watching. Just know what you're getting into, and if you're just on the fence, skip it.
Yeah, go watch The Lobster.
Yeah, go watch The Lobster.
Because I feel like if you're going to compare the ones at least The Lobster, there's a lot more. It's still kind of dark, but it's not the same kind of dark.
Right.
Does that make sense?
The dark comedy hits a lot harder with The Lobster.
Yes.
You get that sense a lot more.
Yeah, you can categorize that into the comedic humorous section a lot better than you can with Dogtooth.
Yes.
But overall, I mean, go check it out. I agree. I think if you're into his work, and I am, since we've been doing a couple of his films, I'm kind of more and more kind of falling into this kind of onto his team. Like I like what he's doing with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, like I want to see The Favorite. That's one of his. I think it came out in 2018. And there's a couple more that I really want to go through his filmography, and just even the shorts that he's done. I want to see them.
Yeah, those short films look pretty intriguing too. He came out. I had saw something that he had a new one coming out, and it looks like, as I'm looking through, at least right here, I don't see anything immediately. There was The Favorite was the most recent one, and that has Emma Stone in it and Rachel Weisz.
Yeah.
So those are pretty big. So far, most of the films, with the exception of Colin Farrell, are kind of unknown talent, but those are some pretty big names.
Yeah, it's definitely worth checking out. I think that's my guess based on his previous work.
It looks good. Yeah. Well, this is Dogtooth. This is the Tame Aperture podcast. Gabe and Alan, go check us out at tameaperture.com for previous episodes, and give us suggestions on future episodes to break down and talk about. Join us in our community over there at the website, and also on all streaming platforms, including YouTube. Go check it out. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and take care.
The Tame Aperture podcast is produced by Dutch Angle Pictures in association with Studio B Productions. Listen, watch, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and YouTube.